Okay, now, so we have already studied two types of buck boost converters, right? We have talked about the regular buck boost converter, which is an inverting buck boost converter. And then we do have a non-inverting buck boost converter. So the non-inverting buck boost converter offers us the advantage of non-inversion and other modes of operation, but it requires more number of devices or switches and diodes. If you see one of the observation which you may have made is that, if for example, if we talk about, let's say, boost converter, right? This is a boost converter. If you see the waveform of current IL, which is also same as the waveform of input current, right? Current drawn from this source IN. It is on off, right? So you see it can have a very small ripple depending on how large inductance value you use. But then what happens to the switch current IS1? Now IS1, when the switch is on, I'm drawing a boost converter, not a buck converter, but that's okay. Same thing is applicable for buck also. So I'm drawing a boost converter. So if you see, when you turn on switch IS1, which is in the second half, then this is the current of switch S1. Now, even if you use a very large value of L, this ripple, which is across the inductor current, would keep on reducing. But here, if you see, although this would keep on reducing, but the total ripple would remain more or less the same, right? The effect may not be that significant after a certain value of L. So although you are able to reduce the input current ripple, the output current ripple remains more or less the same, and therefore you would still have to use a large value of C. So as L increases, your delta I in reduces, but delta IS1 may not reduce substantially, and which implies that C may still be large, right? Now if you look at buck converter, then it just reverses, right? Although your output ripple will continue to reduce, your input ripple would remain the same irrespective of increasing the value of L. That might affect your source, right? Because now this source has to supply that ripple. Think of it as, let's say, battery. If your battery supplies a large ripple current, then it will have more heat generation and it would age faster, right? So you don't want your battery to supply this high frequency current, right? And therefore you would like your input current ripple also to be small. So ideally what you want is your both delta I in and delta IO. When I say IO, I don't mean the final load current, but I mean at the output stage of that converter, right? You want both of these to be low as possible. Buck converter, one of them is low, other one is high. Similarly, boost also, one of them is low, other one is high. If you see buck boost, that is in a way even worse in this aspect, because you see both input and output current. Input current is like this and output current is like this. When I say output, again I mean I'm referring this as IO and this as I in, right? If you see, both current would have large ripple. If you continue to reduce L, still the ripple may more or less remain the same after a certain value of L. Right? So therefore in buck boost it is even worse. You can keep very large value of L, but still your input and output current ripples may be more, and which would end up either affecting your performance of the battery if it is connected, or using a large value of output capacity, or both of them, right? So what can we do to solve this ripple issue? I mean, ideally we would like if there's an inductor in both input side as well as in the output side. So if you imagine that if you can have a circuit wherein you can have an input stage, you can have an inductor, and you can have an output stage and there is another inductor, right? If you can get some circuit of this sort, obviously something comes in between, then your input ripple can also be minimized by increasing L, and your output ripple can also be minimized by increasing the value of L out. That is the motivation of this particular video. Let's see how to do that. So what we'll do is we'll take a boost converter, we'll take a buck converter and put them in cascade, right? So let's see if we have a boost. Now boost, the good thing was very less input voltage ripple. So therefore I can use a boost. And buck, good thing was very low output voltage ripple. So I can use a buck converter. Right, so now if I can combine them somehow by maintaining the input of the buck, input of the boost and output of the buck, then I might end up with a circuit where I have inductance in both input as well as output side. Right, so let me just rearrange the position of the diode and the switch. Right, if you see, the diode and the switch both are anyways connected in series, so I can just rearrange their position. So let me redraw. This is a switch now, and I'm just maintaining the polarity and redrawing these two things, right? Similarly, I would rearrange the right hand side circuit, which is the buck circuit. First, let me just flip this circuit. So I'm just creating a mirror image of this circuit. Right, I've just flipped this circuit. Now in the next step, what I do is, in this buck converter circuit, I would just redraw it. Just this source, I would bring it here, and switch, I would bring it here, then the diode. Now if you see output, again L and output voltage are in series, so I can rearrange them and I can do L first instead of the voltage first, right? So I have only done some minor rearrangements in buck and boost. It has not changed their basic operating principle. The basic operating principle still remains the same. The operation still remains the same. Now observe this particular highlighted region and this highlighted region. You see, both of them look similar, right? So that means what we can do is we can have a common instead of having these two circuits, we can have a common circuit and connect the input side and connect the output side to that common circuit. So instead of using twice the components, we can reduce some of the components. So let me draw first this common circuit. And now let me draw the output from the output side, and let me draw the input from the input side of the converter. And that's it. This is the circuit. Let me call it as V in, VO. You observe the output polarity is still negative, right? But then you do have inductor in both input and the output sides, which would help you in reducing the ripple. And let me call this as VC1. We call this as switch S1, this as diode D2. If you see this circuit has a name. It's called as Cook converter. Sorry, it's pronounced as Chuk converter. Right, so you see this Chuk converter, it can now obviously we have integrated a buck with a boost here, right? So you would expect that the output to input voltage relation would be the cascaded effect. What was VC1? VC1 was this cap voltage in the boost converter circuit, and therefore you can write VC1 is nothing but duty cycle of this switch, which is the same as duty cycle of this switch. So VC1 is Vn upon 1 minus D, and VO is, if you see from the output circuit, VO is equal to D times VC1, and therefore you can write VO by Vn is equal to D upon 1 minus D. So it is a buck boost converter, right? It has the same expression as the buck boost converter. Now you can certainly directly write it. Otherwise, what we can do is we can draw the waveforms of the current and voltages, and we can then apply volt second balance and still derive the same equation. Let's see. So let's say S1 is on during this period, and during the remaining period S1 is off and D2 is on, right? You have to understand that I'm still talking about the continuous conduction mode, right? That means none of the inductor current comes to zero and stays at zero. The inductor current, both of the inductor currents are always positive. So now if I draw IL1, when S1 is on, what happens is, this is the equivalent circuit. You have an input voltage, you have an inductor, you have a short here, right? Now VC2 polarity would block D2, and therefore you have this circuit, and the diode D2 is off, right? So if you see IL1, let me refer this direction as IL2. What happens to IL1? L1 dIL1 by dt is equal to Vn. Therefore, inductor current IL1 is rising during this period, right? And the voltage across inductor 1 is Vn. What about VL2? You can again write Kirchhoff's voltage law in the other loop. VO minus VC1 plus L2 dIL2 by dt is equal to 0. I can rewrite this as L2 dIL2 by dt is equal to VC1 minus VO, right? So what happens to inductor 2 during this period? IL2 VC2. What is VO? As we understand, this is VC1 was the intermediate voltage, so VC1 would be greater than VO, and therefore this term is positive. So IL2 is also rising in this period, right? Now what happens when S1 is off? When S1 is off implies D2 is on, right? You can see that the equivalent circuit would now look something like this. Now the switch is off, and therefore the diode has to conduct because of the current that would flow through it, and the equivalent would look something like this. You can repeat this step, you can write the inductor current equations, right, for both the inductors, and what you would realize is that both the inductors in this mode are falling, right? If you want, we can write here, for example, this is plus minus, we can say that L1 dIL1 by dt is given by Vin minus VC1. VC1 is more than Vin, so therefore this is negative. Similarly, L2 dIL2 by dt is given by minus VO, which is also negative. So IL2 is also falling here, right? You can apply volt second balance to both L1 and L2, and you would get the same relationship between V in, VC1 and VO as what we have written just above. Right, so this is another converter which was called as Chuk. There are now few similar converters which we are not going to talk about in this course, but I should not say similar, but they have certain similar properties. So if you see Chuk converter, it's also called as fourth order converter. Why is it called fourth order converter? Because there are four energy storage elements: L1, C1, L2 and C2. So it's also called as fourth order. Our regular buck converter, if you see, there were only two energy storage elements, so they were called as second order. So if you see, Chuk converter falls in this category of fourth order converters, right? And there are a few other converters which falls in this category. One of them is SEPIC, SEPIC, and the other one is Zeta, ZETA. So you can see how their circuit looks like. They are certainly different from, all the three circuits are different, and they do have their own advantages and limitations, right?